Hey kawan, welcome to EDC Ready. Today we are going to do a full review of this guy. This is the Spyderco Native 5 Salt. Okay, it comes in FRN scales, it comes in LC200N, and it comes with a standard Spyderco pocket clip that is black anodized right here. Okay, so a little backstory of this guy. This is one of my grill knives. It is not particularly expensive knife. I believe it runs for about 130, 140 USD, something like that. Here in Malaysia, it should be around 700 ringgit. I'm not so sure what the retail price is anymore right now, but you can expect it to be around 700, 6 or 700 ringgit. Okay, not too far away from the standard Para 3. But this guy right here is part of their Salt series, which means that it is designed to be practically impervious to rust at all, and that is because of the blade steel. That is because of, you know, the handles right here. There are no liners on the inside of it. You have a coated pocket clip and all that. I got this second hand off of a guy named Wilson Ng from the local community here, so do check him out on the Instagram. And then if you're following him on Facebook, just well, give a little shout out to him. Now, before we get into the full review, let's do some basic measurements. Let's talk about the weight dimension here. Being a Native 5, it is going to be pretty darn light, especially with the FRN scales here. 69 grams. I did a pre-measurement, and 69 grams comes in at about 2.43 ounces. Let's check out the blade shape. The blade length. This should come in at right around 3 inches, as you can see there. We have a handle length of just over 4 inches, as you can see there. Of course, you can check these specs out on Blade HQ. Locally, we have a lot of shops that sell them. I think you can pre-order them from Gear Evo, and of course, you can also pre-order them from Thomas Tools, but you can't pre-order them right now. As of the 26th, going to the 27th of January 2021, they are very difficult to come by because I think the US manufacturing plant is not producing enough of these guys right now because of the coronavirus not helping with manufacturing processes and whatnot. Blade thickness comes in at a healthy... Sorry, that's not the blade. Yeah, okay, there we go. Blade thickness comes in at a healthy 0.12 inches. And then the handle thickness, let's just measure at this part right here, 0.44 inches. Very nice and thin. And also the width of the blade here is going to come in at, here you go, yeah, see, at 1.42 inches. Now Spyderco's, because of the spidey hole, will have a slightly wider profile here in the pocket, so just so you know, keep that in mind. Now time to compare it with a couple of other knives. Here it is to another Spyderco. This is the Spyderco Para 3 Lightweight. Okay, as you can see, it uses the same FRN. They're both coming out of the USA factory of Spyderco. Don't know if you guys can see that right there. There we go. So is this guy. Okay, you can kind of see that they have similar jimping right here. I love Spyderco's jimping. They tend to be a little bit sharp on the edges, but they give a lot of very good traction. And as you can see, this guy comes with a different shaped blade. This guy comes with a leaf blade, which means it doesn't have this little hump that you see in other Spydercos out there, which means that it's actually going to ride in the pocket a little bit smaller because it does not have that hump. So that's a very interesting comparison. Let's compare it with another popular knife. We have here the Benchmade Bug Out. So the Bug Out is definitely going to have a slightly longer blade, but a much longer sharpened blade length because it does not have a finger choil. In terms of thickness as well, Bug Out definitely going to be a little bit thinner than this guy. There you go. Bug Out is going to be definitely thinner than this guy. Last but not least, another knife that is new to my collection, the Ferrum Forged Stinger. Okay, so without further ado, let's do a review of this knife from tip to butt. Starting from the top here. The thing that caught me, that caught my eye about this knife is this blade steel. LC200N is a fantastic blade steel. Right there. LC200N is a fantastic blade steel for two reasons. First and foremost, it is a practically rust resistant steel, and I've said that a few times already, but what I really love about that is living in a hot, humid country, the knife is either going to rust from getting caught in the rain, or it's going to rust because of the sweat in your pocket. So because of that, these stain resistant steels I really like. Nitro V is very stain resistant. S30V is also very stain resistant, in this case with a coating for extra measure. Really like that. It just lends to this feeling of I can just bring this knife and not worry about it, and that's what I really love about this blade steel. The blade itself is very nicely designed. You have a nice full flat grind that goes from here all the way to the top. The flat grind kind of cuts through the hole a little bit, but unlike with other Spydercos I've had in the past, including the Para 3, the edges here have actually been rounded off. This little corner here tends to be pretty sharp, especially from Spydercos in the Japan factory, like the Delica and the Dragonfly. This corner here can be really sharp, but here is nice and rounded, the edges here. And also the inside of the hole has also softened up a little bit, which I really like. This is a very well designed spider hole, despite having that little line cutting through the hole of the spider. Another thing I really like about this blade shape is you have a little bit of, over here is flat, but over here you have a little bit chamfering at the top right here, and it just adds a nice little visual flair to the blade, which I really like. The blade slices really well. Spydercos do really well with their blades. This guy, Para 3 lightweight, pretty good slicer, but it is a little bit of a thick of a blade. But this guy is going to be a thinner blade stock, which means it's going to slice really nice. Much better, not much better, quite a little bit better than the Para 3 lightweight. Ergonomics of the blade, I really like it. It has this kind of like 60% finger choil on the blade and 40% on the handle, which means that coupled with this jimping, you can grip this and it's not going to go anywhere in the pocket. In terms of the tip of the blade here, it's nice and pointy. It's definitely not as pointy as this guy right here. This guy comes to a much more keener edge, which means that this guy will be great for poking, but it's not going to have the strongest tip. This guy right here is going to be between that guy and this guy. This guy tends to have a little bit of a thicker tip. So it's like a good medium. It's going to be like very nice to slice, very nice to pierce, but it is not going to be as brittle as some of the other blades on this table, like this guy right here. Super thin. Yeah. Okay. So what do I not like about this blade? There is very little thing. I can't really even think about something that I don't like about this blade. It is a nice, has a nice amount of flat, little bit of belly and nice sharp tip. And because of this chamfering at the top here, it comes to a pretty needle-like kind of sharp tip right here. Of course, not as thin as some of the other knives on this table, but it still comes to a nice sharp point right here. You have nice rounding off of the sharp edges in the spider hole. You have nice gripping and all that. I guess the only thing I can kind of say about it, and it's not really a bad thing, but this turns off some people, which is the ratio of sharpened blade length to handle is very big, okay, compared to something like this guy, where you have this much blade length to this much handle, and this guy you have this much blade length to this much handle. So that ratio kind of throws people off a little bit. But on the good side of that is that you are going to get some really nice control of the blade itself. Once you grip it in, okay, you're going to have a lot of good control because you have all of the handle in your hand and you have that for torque. Very nice. Alright, enough about the blade, which I really love. Moving back, what do we have here? We have a backlock. Backlocks are very strong. Based on what I've seen and what I've read and what I've experienced, backlocks are some of the strongest types of locks out there. Maybe a backlock is second only maybe to the triad lock. I don't really know, but at the end of the day, a backlock will be pretty much more resilient than your liner locks, because a liner lock is this thin piece of metal that is in the tang of the blade, and maybe even more durable than your axis lock right here. If you want more information about which locks are the strongest, you can check out a video by Blade HQ where they tested different locks to see which lock strength is better. That being said, like optimum lock strength or maximizing lock strength may not be the best case scenario for most people, because for most people they just want a lock that works, but they also want a lock that fidgets. Okay, just like this guy, the compression lock. Very nice, very fidgety, very easy to use. The great thing about a backlock is that it is ambidextrous. So whether or not you're using it with your right hand, okay, or you're using it with your left hand, assuming you can flip the clip around, which you can in this case, you're going to get the same experience as a lefty as a righty. So one of the few ambidextrous knives out there. So you left-handers, you can rejoice. Another good thing about Backlock is that when you can pass this to a non-knife person and they'll immediately understand how Backlock works. No, you pass someone a liner lock, sometimes they might not even get how it's locking, so I have to tell them to push this over to the side. Same as a frame lock. Compression locks can be a little bit more confusing, okay, but once you show it to them, it becomes pretty intuitive. Backlocks, people can kind of see that, you know, it's kind of instinctual to when it locks to disengage the lock by pressing this in the back. So it's a very safe lock, not just in terms of its strength, but in terms of its ambidextrosity. So left-handers can also experience it the same way a right-hander can. And also for non-knife people, it's also safe for them to use because they kind of have this instinctual knowledge of how to use a backlock. Now, one bad thing I can say about the backlock is that the edges here are kind of sharp. So I wish they could have maybe rounded off or softened up the edges here as they did on the inside of here. But it's just a little bit sharp on the sides here. Now, on the Dragonfly and the Delica, you have a little divot in the middle of the lock here. Okay, it just drops in just a little bit, and then the edges are a little bit softer. So that's very nice if they incorporate that into the future design. Now, moving up a little bit, we have the pivot. Now, the pivot is it's an all plastic pivot. Okay, you can check out my disassembly video of this knife. It's an all plastic pivot where you do not have any washers. Okay, some knives you have washers on both ends, some knives you have bearings on both ends, some knives you have a mixture of washer on one end and then plastic on another end, and then this guy right here is on both sides you have both Teflon and phosphor bronze on each side. This guy, it just sticks from metal, not stick, it just rests on metal to plastic, in this case FRN, which initially I thought was going to be a problem, but for some reason you can still open this up. There's no blade play at all, and once you depress this, it's still going to drop. Okay, it's not going to drop on your finger, we'll get to that in a little bit, but it still drops really well. So backlock, very well done. I've had some annoying backlocks, especially triad locks, where you really have to depress this all the way to the bottom for it to disengage, and it's quite difficult to get it to disengage. But they did the backlock here really well, where you can just press this, it lifts up the back spring, and then the blade will just drop onto your finger. Now, that being said, what is the action like dropping? The action dropping is very nice because it is pretty much a free dropper. Okay, yeah, like that. Pretty much a free dropper on its own. But you have this nice little finger choil right here that catches your index finger, like so. See that? I'll do that again. Like so. And this just means is that it's going to be a very safe backlock to open up single-handedly and then also close single-handedly. My other backlock my most recent backlock is the Civivi Rustic Gen, and I have cut myself on that so many times because it does not have this ability to catch on your finger when it closes. Oh, another thing is that Spyderco pretty much revolutionized the backlock, and by that I mean they have a mid backlock whereas most traditional backlocks are towards the back. So when you press it, it's going to come closing on your hand like that. That's how I got cut. This guy right here, you can just catch it with your index finger. Now, disassembly of this knife, super easy. All the screws here are T8. This FRN clamshells open like that, very nice, unlike my Delica that I used to have, which is kind of like an FRN integral knife. So that kind of made it a little bit complicated, not bad, but just a little bit complicated, more complicated than it need to be. Especially this guy, very easy to disassemble. I love knives that have, you know, the same pivot screw size all the way around, which is the same as this guy, this 10 gram Santa Fe, this $25 knife, and then you have it here in this Spyderco as well. Love that. Now let's talk about the FRN. So the FRN here, this is possibly the best FRN I felt on a knife before, especially a Spyderco. The only other FRN Spyderco knife I have is this guy. And what is the difference? Well, they're both made in America, okay? So assuming that they kind of they are sourced from the same place, but the finishing of it is a little bit different. This guy is actually a little bit more slippery, and it comes down to two reasons. Number one is that the ridges here are not as prominent. You still get good grip, but it's not very prominent. And then the edges here are a little bit more finely scrubbed or more finely polished compared to this guy. Okay, if I can Hopefully you can zoom in a little bit here. Compared to this guy, the ridges here are much taller, much sharper, and then the edges here, they're just a little bit more matte finish. I love the scales right here. You have some nice rounding on the edges here. Unfortunately, with FRN, you do tend to get sharpness on the inside, and it's like that with every FRN knife I have. But the outside, you get really good grip with this, and then you get some nice matte finish, and it should have really good grip because this is a salt knife. It's meant to be used out there on the water, out at sea, on a river, at the beach or whatever. So it's really designed to not only be impervious to rust, but also to be easy to use in salty or wet situations. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is the ergonomics. I felt a Native 5 lightweight before. It was Nicholas's. It was Bapat's, we call him. Okay, so that's why I wanted a Native 5, because when I held his Native 5 lightweight in hand, it was the most comfortable knife I've ever held in hand, and it continues to be so. And my taste in knife have evolved since that day. You know, I have other Spydercos before. This guy, pretty nice in hand. I have Benchmade. This guy, pretty nice in hand, a little bit nicer in the pocket. I've had Ferrum Forges before. Very nice in hand, very nice finger choil, very nice in the pocket. One hot spot of the clip right here. Do check out the review of this knife on my channel. But all that taking into consideration, this guy, the Native 5 lightweight with the FRN, in this case the Native 5 Salt, is the most comfortable knife I've ever held in my hands. Okay, it is. I just can't get over how good it is to hold this knife, how good it is to use this knife. It feels like it is a part of your wrist, and then it feels like it is a part of your hand. And that is the best way I can describe the ergonomics of this knife. Just amazing. Now, there's only one thing I would change about this knife. It is not the pivot, it is not the washers, it is not the locking mechanism, it is not the action, it is definitely not this blade with this blade steel. What I would change with this knife is the pocket clip. Now, I understand why they did it this way. Being a salt knife, let's say you have this in your pocket, your hands might be wet, it might be slippery, you might be wearing gloves, you might not want to fiddle with a knife with a deep carry pocket clip. You can just grab this at the tip and then pull it out. However, I'm coming at this from an everyday carry perspective. I do like a deep carry pocket clip, and that is the upgrade I would use for the I would get for this knife. A nice deep carry pocket clip from MXG or XC or something like that, just so that it hides a little bit better in the pocket. For me, being discreet, having a deep carry pocket clip on a knife is a bit more important on an everyday basis. That being said, another thing that kind of caught me off guard is the yellow scales. Now, don't get me wrong, I knew the scales were going to be yellow. I knew that it's going to be loud and shouty, but there's a reason why it's yellow. It is because, you know, as you dive, certain colors disappear very quickly, like reds disappear very quickly, browns disappear very quickly. Certain colors just stand out, survive in the blue waters a little bit easier. Bright yellow is one of them, neon green is the other one of them, which is why a lot of the salt series are either this kind of bright yellow and this neon green. But when I got it in hand, I thought that I was just going to take this and I was going to dip dye it, make it a little bit OD green, which I love, or even make it go all the way black if I wanted to. But I kind of dig it. I kind of like the yellow. So the yellow here is not like a ugly yellow in my opinion. It might look worse on camera, but in person, this may be because I love mustard, but it has this nice like light mustard color, which I really like. So and then the other thing is that all my other knives are either black or OD green or whatever. So this little pop of color I have in my collection is just nice for the eye, you know, just something that really stands out. It really sticks out to you. And yeah, so on the back here, just to finish it off, you have some nice you have a nice little back spacer here. It does have all these ridges, but it's kind of pointless. They're kind of a little bit shallow. Doesn't really give you a lot of grip. Not that you really need it. This knife has a lot of grip on its own already. Fingers, I wear small gloves. I get a 4-finger grip. I might even be able to squeeze another finger, maybe even another 2 in the back. Okay, sorry for my phrasing, but yeah, you can definitely squeeze 2 fingers in the back once you get the whole fist up the front. Never mind. Okay, thank you very much. In conclusion, I love this knife. This knife is a grill knife to me because it is the epitome of a functional knife for me. Okay, the only thing that's missing in this knife is a deep carry pocket clip. and that's the only thing I can say. If you were to ask me in my entire collection right now, what would be the last knife I would keep, I would be very tempted to keep this knife because I am a fidgeter. I do love the fidget factor. But if you take that fidget factor, okay, which has no functional effect whatsoever, you're talking about what is the best functional knife in my collection, it is going to be this guy. This is a knife that you carry and then you don't worry about it at all. You do not worry about it rusting, you do not worry about you dropping it, and when you want to look for it, it's going to be tough to find because it's bright yellow. You can see it in most situations, assuming that, you know, it's not hiding under a tree or an octopus stole it from you or whatever. It's a great blade shape, and the ergonomics, I fell in love with it and I'm still in love with it. Okay guys, thank you so much. If you guys want to support the channel, do check out the links below to my Instagram, my Patreon, and a affiliate link to Thomas Tools to check out if you want some knives from there or not. Okay guys, thank you very much, and as always, stay ready.